So how do we treat this idea of bukhul? Treat this by realizing that those who achieved affluence did so only dahran tawilan, that they did so only by exhausting themselves over long periods of time, thus finally accumulating what they sought. Meanwhile, right, and this is the reality, just as they approach the heights of their earthly splendor, then they die. So this is that person that spent years and years and years and hours and hours and hours and neglected family and neglected time at the masjid and neglected studying fard ayn, knowledge that is necessary for him to be able to practice his deen. And this person neglected going for hajj, and this person neglected, did all of this stuff and put every hour of his life into his work, into his business in order to accumulate. And then what happens? You die. Like, what's the retirement age in America? Well, it used to be 65. Now, I don't think like financially many people can retire still at 65. So you retire at 65 with this, again, what used to be, sorry millennials, what used to be a big nest egg of wealth, only to like spend it on a nursing home, only to like, you just, eventually your wealth gets taken away from you. So you spent all this time and all this effort to try to achieve, and you were hanging on to it. You didn't want to spend a penny. You didn't want to spend on your kids because that would have been money taken away from your account. You didn't want to spend on your masjid because that would have been money taken away from your account. You didn't want to spend on even yourself, right? You didn't want to get like a nicer car, though it was within your means and it wouldn't have been a means of show to do so. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, and we had mentioned the question last time, even spending on perfume, smelling nice, wear good clothes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beautiful. He loves to see the effect of His beauty on His ibad. So this person was so bakhil, had plenty, had more than plenty, but refused to spend it, just so he can end up dead. So treat miserliness by recognizing also the disdain that people have for misers. Right? Nobody likes a miser. Right? They're just nasty to be around. حتى بعضهم لبعضهم. Even the hatred that misers have for one another. It's like a really cheap person. You know who really hates a cheap person? Another cheap person. So recognize that. It doesn't do you any good. With this same treatment, treat the person whose heart's ailment is love of wealth. Money is not to be loved. Money is to be given. Money is to be given. We'll end with this one point, inshallah. So we just spent a whole hour or so talking about what is the best thing that a person can do with their wealth. What is it? Give. Right? To give. That's the best thing that a person can do with their wealth. The very next ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Shaykh Nasir recited it in Surah Al-Isha, in Salatul Isha, he said, الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately juxtaposes the best thing that you can do with your wealth with the very worst thing that you can do with your wealth. And that is riba. Riba does not have a specific translation in the Arabic language. It was just known what riba is. Generally, we categorize it as giving a loan, expecting that loan to be paid back with more. So that's a very rough way of speaking about riba, or what we term as interest. الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذين يتخبط الشيطان من المس يمحق الله الربا ويربي الصدقات. The ayat continue, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wipes out riba, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yurbi as-sadaqat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually returns to you what you give in sadaqah. Wallahu la yuhibbu kulla kaffarin athim. Riba is detested because riba, interest, oppresses people. By its very nature, its means is to oppress people. I give you $100, I'm expecting you to give me $110. I am oppressing this individual, or somebody who might really be in need and may choose to take a loan for whatever, to fulfill their basic need. This person is going to be oppressed by the concept of riba. It comes in another place, Mujahid rahimahullah, one of the famous commentators on the Quran, he says that riba is also, now for this ayat we refer to specifically, not even this one, these ayat we refer specifically in Surah Al-Baqarah to the idea, the transactional riba, right? I give a loan and I expect the loan to be paid back with interest. Riba, another meaning of riba in the Arabic language that was commonly known to the Arab is when you give a gift to someone, expecting them to give you a better gift in return. That's deep. Right? You go to somebody's house and you're like, oh, Mubarak, you know, here's a nice blender. Right? But you're expecting when they come to your house that they're going to give you. Okay? This is another form of riba. Specifically, we'll talk about the financial riba, but that idea also has a place in our hearts that needs to be kicked out if we want to remove ourselves of this bukhul. So, the idea of riba. Now, where did these ayat come down for riba? It's mentioned that it came down in about the 4th year of the Hijrah. So this was after Badr. It was after, what was the major battle after Badr? Uhud. And then came Al-Khandaq, right? And then came Al-Ahzab. Okay? So it was like year 1, year 2, year 3 almost. Before the Ahzab, so after the kuffar had been effectually like kicked several times in the gut, the kuffar decided to amass a giant army in order to attack and finally get rid of the Muslims. The kuffar didn't have enough money in order to do this. So where did they get the money to fund the Ahzab? Anybody know? From who? They took interest-bearing loans from the Jews of Medina. History repeats itself. Okay, they took loans from the Jews of Medina. Those that had been, at this point, they had been kicked out of Medina, but they were still on the outskirts. They took massive loans from the Jews of Medina, and the Jews were like, all right, we'll give you the money. You destroy the Muslims, but we're still going to want our payback plus. Okay, so the Muslims saw this going on, and they thought to themselves, well, maybe we should also take loans so that we can pull together an army, so that we can fight the kuffar. But nobody was giving 0% interest loans back in that day. Anybody that had money to loan, the Jews, were charging exorbitant amounts of interest on top of those loans. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbade them taking loans. Even if we die, like this is the principle that we learn. Even if we die, I am not going to take an interest-bearing loan to do something that even looks like on the outset as protecting the name of Islam. Okay? So from this series, from these ayat, a couple of rulings come. One, is it permissible to give an interest-bearing loan? Absolutely not, right? No disagreement on that whatsoever. Now, where we as a community sometimes get tricky is, well, okay, I won't give a loan, but what if I take an interest-bearing loan? Is that permissible? It is a fiqhi question. As a principle, this is not permissible. Allah knows best. So as a principle, even this is not permissible. If a person is in extreme need, that's where the fiqhi opinions can come in, and there can be some ikhtilaf, there can be some difference of opinion, that if a person is in extreme need and the absolute only way that they can fulfill their needs is to take this interest-bearing loan. Now everybody's got the question, what about my school? What about my tuition? What about... As a principle, we take the deen as it is. Udkhulu fi silmi kafa. Yeah.
Good question. For example, you have a credit card. When you pay on time, there's no interest. When you do miss a payment, do you with that, what you just said, should I still get the credit card confidently paying it on time, or should I deter away from it?
So the advice that I give with using credit cards is that, and I think Brother Zafar, you're the financial guy, credit cards are a good system if you pay off your full principal. Okay? So what that means is an individual has to budget. You basically use a credit card like a debit card. If you got no money in the account, the debit card's not going to swipe. So you should be wise with the way that you use your credit card. Get the miles, get the 2% cash back, all of that. Some of the ulama say that it is jaiz, Allah knows best. But if you're going to use your credit card for anything, make sure that you're within your means and you can pay that amount off. Do not allow it to accrue interest. On top of interest comes late fees, then with late fees comes more interest, and then, and you end up in a broken system. يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَى وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wipes out riba. You have absolutely nothing, but what you give in sadaqah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevates.